Plugin of the week is the PuigChild 660 and 670. This is an emulation by Waves of the Fairchild compressor 660 and 670. The primary difference between the two is that the 660 is a mono unit and the 670 is a stereo unit. Now, this was created in the 1950s by Reen Narma. And this is a true Veramu compressor. And what that means basically, Veramu is like a term for tubes. And the compression is actually applied using the tubes. And in quite a lot of vintage gear, tubes are added for other purposes, either for gain structure purposes or for the purpose of actually warming up or adding a harmonic distortion characteristic to the audio. Whereas in a true Veramu compressor, like the Manley Veramu compressor or the Fairchild compressor, they actually use the bias current and modulation of the bias current to determine the actual amount of gain reduction that occurs through the tube. So in actuality, the physical unit, and I've worked on with these many times, is about 6 rack spaces, weighs about 65 pounds, which is close to 30 kilograms, if you're doing the math on that end. Has 20 tubes and 11 transformers, which is really where most of the weight comes from. And this thing is designed purely for just ridiculous amounts of audio quality. It is an insanely great sounding limiter and is often referred to as the holy grail of limiters or compressors. Now, the way that this is designed is that primarily you have two input gain controls, a left input gain and a right input gain control. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a quick full reset here. So we got our settings set back to normal. And the way that this works is that we have an on-off switch, and this actually is like a power down switch kind of thing. There is an actual emulation of the noise that's generated from the 60 cycle version and the 50 cycle version, which is US power versus European power essentially. What we have is an input control, and then we have a threshold control, and this determines the onset of compression. And then we have an unusual button here, which is called a time constant, and the time constant effectively deals with the release time. Now, the attack time varies, but it's always less than a millisecond, so it's quite fast and is usually not an issue. So whatever setting that you put here is not going to make a difference, but I'll basically show you how this works. And then you have an output gain control. Now, true to the original, this can work in left-right mode or in lateral-vertical mode, which is a common mode that would be used for cutting lathes back in the 50s and 60s. And the idea is that it will control the lateral and the vertical and lateral movement of the actual cutting head, the up and down or vertical movement being the amplitude, and the left-right movement more or less going to the left and right signals, but the frequency response. That's how it would move back and forth in terms of cutting the grooves, and the combination of all of that together gives you the stereo audio signal. So in more common language speak, this would be like mid-side processing. So this would allow you to compress the mid signal separate from the right signal, and also allow you to adjust gain separately. So that processing is built in and actually true to the original version. So what we have here is that the only addition is the linked control, which means that the left gain and settings would actually be duplicated on both sides, and that's the basic setup. So that's the basic layout. Now, this is really, with the tubes and transformers, an incredibly rich, beautiful sounding compressor. Adds a load of depth to the sound and size to the sound. It's hard to kind of quantify other than that. And if you ever get the opportunity to work on a real original unit, you can't believe how good they sound. It's just like, your your tongue is hitting the floor, kind of like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And I think this is probably, maybe the most difficult of the vintage compressors to try to really emulate accurately, and I think Waves has actually done a really very good job with it. Now, the way that we start here is, let's just start with a basic mix. So this is very basic. It's just got some subtractive EQ on it and levels and panning and not a whole lot more. But just to show you the kind of power of this, what I can do is I can set the threshold here to start triggering gain reduction. Now, I can slow down the release time here which by hitting the different the different time constant characteristics. So at its short setting, it's about 300 milliseconds, and then it steps up to about 800 milliseconds, so you can see it slows down. Goes up to about 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and then it has a couple of time-dependent release characteristics, where if you're compressing pretty heavily, watch, if I set it up here, where it'll literally take as long as like 15-20 seconds for it to go all the way back to non-gain reduction. And this is more of a broadcast type of thing where you want that long holdover, so when the audio comes back in, it's not coming back in full volume. And it's quite a fast attack time, so it acts quite well as a limiter in terms of the control. Now, generally, people use it in different ways. I'm not one in particular to hit it really hard, I guess, although some people do that. It's amazing on mixes. You see it quite a lot used in as a plugin in mastering applications. Obviously, like we talked about for the cutting lathe, that would be one obvious use, but if you're obviously not doing that in the modern era, this would also be a great plugin that you see emulated a lot for application there. Also great on your mix bus, so mastering mix bus. It sounds great on vocals, on bass, on drums. You can put it almost on anything that you really want a warmth and richness and depth. The thing I will say is that as true with any vintage compressor, if you use it on everything, it has a tendency to somewhat negate the effect. And that's a whole other subject that you have to, kind of get into just by experiencing it and doing it in a mix, or taking one of my mixing courses where I talk very particularly about that, how really when you get the character of something, you want that one thing to be on a particular instrument or vocal and not on a lot of other things, so that thing really stands out as unique. So generally, if you work here, just kind of getting it to get it so it's just giving you like a couple dB of gain reduction here. Just the makeup gain accordingly.
Care how we faded out, how we drifted apart. You never left the special place. You were there from the start.
So on the surface, it may not be like so obvious what's going on, but if you really listen to the imaging and depth quality that's added when the plugin is added in, then you really start to get what the PuigChild is all about.
Sun was shining on, shining out there, yellow and blue looking everywhere.
It's like all of a sudden everything becomes more open and clear and like deep.
And all I've got left to say is
and since I'm getting like more like 3 dB of gain reduction, let me kind of go in that direction.
Care how we faded out, how we drifted apart. You never left the special place. You were there from the start. You were there, you were there, you were there. The sun was shining on, shining out there, yellow and blue.
And that's really the kind of general characteristic. Of course, obviously the gain reduction is going to move around based on the different sections here, and because this is not entirely balanced or like a really close to finished mix, maybe some of that detail is not quite going to come through as clearly, but you can really hear the sense of depth that's added in, and that is only amplified when your mix becomes much better and then you're applying it like on the mix bus end or on an individual track basis. Very, very powerful compressor, great one, and a really great emulation by Waves on this classic compressor. This comes from the Jack Joseph Puig collection. He has an amazing collection of vintage gear, physical vintage gear that's very well maintained, and made a nice deal there, sweet deal with Waves, and to get his PuigChild actually emulated and part of the collection, and I thought they did an amazing job. All right, there you have it. There is the PuigChild / PuigChild 660-670, which is our plugin of the week.